The invitation never came. 3 months before my only daughter's wedding, I discovered through Facebook that 200 guests would celebrate Emma's marriage to millionaire Alex Whitfield, but I wouldn't be one of them. I found out during my lunch break at Prestige Dry Cleaners, sitting in the back room with my tuna sandwich and phone. My friend Carol had shared photos from Emma's bridal shower, a lavish affair at the Four Seasons that I knew nothing about. My hands trembled as I scrolled through image after image. Emma laughing with women I'd never met, champagne toasts and crystal flutes, a cake that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But it was the caption that shattered me. Can't wait for the Whitfield Parker wedding this September. 200 of Boston's finest at the Nantucket estate. 200 guests, and her own mother wasn't one of them?
Before we continue this story, if you believe a mother's worth isn't measured by her bank account, type yes in the comments. I read every single one, and knowing you're there gives me the strength to share what happened next. And please, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel if you want to see how one mother proved that love can't be measured by designer labels. I stared at my phone until the screen went dark, my reflection staring back. A 58-year-old woman in a polyester uniform. Name tag reading Linda. 28 years of service pins lined up like tiny soldiers on my collar. Was this what Emma saw when she looked at me? Someone too embarrassing to include in her new life? My mind drifted to another September, 28 years ago. Emma, just 3 weeks old, screaming with colic while I walked the floors of our tiny apartment. Her father, David, had been gone for 2 months already. A drunk driver took him before he ever got to hold his daughter. I remember whispering to her, "It's just you and me, baby girl, but I promise you'll never want for love." I kept that promise through double shifts in night school, through scraped knees and science fairs, through teenage heartbreaks and college applications. When Emma got into Boston University, I cried harder than she did. The financial aid package still left a $15,000 gap each year. I never told her about the second job I took, cleaning offices at night. She thought I was just tired from getting older. "Linda, you okay?" My supervisor, Maria, poked her head into the break room. "Your lunch ended 10 minutes ago." I quickly wiped my eyes. "Sorry, I'm coming." The afternoon crawled by in a haze of pressed shirts and forced smiles. Every wedding dress that came through for cleaning felt like salt in an open wound. By 5 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to talk to Emma. Her phone went straight to voicemail. "Hi, sweetie, it's Mom. I saw some photos from your shower online. It looked beautiful. Call me when you can. I love you." The next day, voicemail. The day after, voicemail. A week of voicemails. That's when I knew this wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. On Saturday morning, I took the T to Back Bay, to the luxury building where Emma lived with Alex. The doorman recognized me. I'd been coming here for 2 years, usually with homemade soup or cookies. "Good morning, Mrs. Parker. Go right up." The elevator to the 20th floor had never felt longer. My knock echoed in the hallway. I heard footsteps, whispered voices. Then finally, the door opened. Emma stood there in designer loungewear I'd never seen before, a massive diamond catching the morning light. Her face went pale. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "May I come in?"
She hesitated, actually hesitated, before stepping aside. The apartment was immaculate, all white marble and abstract art. Alex emerged from the bedroom, his expression carefully neutral. "Linda, this is unexpected." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The Emma I raised would have rushed to hug me, would have been chattering about wedding plans, asking my opinion on flowers and music. This Emma stood with her arms crossed, unable to meet my eyes. "I saw pictures from your bridal shower," I said quietly. "Carol posted them." Emma's face flushed. "Mom, I was going to call you."
When? After the wedding? The silence stretched between us like an ocean. Finally, Alex cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all sit down and discuss this like adults. Adults. As if I were a child throwing a tantrum, rather than a mother discovering she'd been erased from her daughter's life.
We sat in their pristine living room, me on one white leather sofa, them united on the other. Emma kept playing with her engagement ring, spinning it around and around. "Mom," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "Alex's family, they have certain expectations for the wedding." Expectations? Alex leaned forward, his voice taking on what I'm sure he thought was a reasonable tone. "Linda, you have to understand, this isn't just a wedding. It's a merger of two prominent families. My mother has been planning this since we got engaged. The guest list includes senators, CEOs, people who... People who what?" I interrupted. "People who matter?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Emma finally looked at me, tears in her eyes. "You wouldn't fit in, Mom. You'd feel uncomfortable. All those people talking about their vacation homes and stock portfolios and you think I'd embarrass you." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Neither of them denied it. Alex stood up, his patience apparently exhausted. "Let's be honest here, Linda. Your mother working at a dry cleaner? What would my investors think? What would my mother's friends say? We have a reputation to maintain." "Alex," Emma gasped, but he continued. "We're planning a Nantucket wedding at my family's estate. 3 days of events. The rehearsal dinner alone costs more than you make in a year. This is our world now, Emma's world. We need to maintain certain standards." I felt each word like a physical blow, but I kept my face calm. 28 years of customer service had taught me how to smile through anything. "I see," I said quietly. "And these standards don't include the woman who raised Emma alone, who worked 2 jobs to put her through college, who sat by her bed when she had pneumonia at 15 and nearly died." Emma was crying now, but she didn't move from Alex's side. He put his arm around her, protective, possessive. "We'll send photos," he said, as if offering a consolation prize. "Maybe we can have a small dinner after, just the 3 of us, somewhere appropriate." Somewhere appropriate. Somewhere I couldn't embarrass them with my existence. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after years of standing on hard floors. I looked at my daughter one last time, memorizing her face, searching for the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Emma," I said softly, "do you remember what you wrote in that Mother's Day card when you were 12? You said I was your hero, that you wanted to be just like me when you grew up." Her sob caught in her throat, but still she said nothing. "I guess you changed your mind." I walked to the door with as much dignity as I could muster. My hand was on the knob when Alex delivered the final blow. "Oh, Linda, we'll need you to keep this quiet. No social media posts, no telling mutual friends. We don't need any complications." I didn't turn around. I couldn't. If I had, they would have seen the moment my heart shattered completely. "Goodbye, Emma," I whispered, and closed the door on the life I thought we'd built together. The hallway blurred through my tears as I made my way to the elevator. The doorman wished me a good day. I don't remember the train ride home. I just remember standing in my small apartment in Dorchester, looking at the walls covered in photos of Emma and me, realizing that I'd become someone she was ashamed of. The invitation never came because I was never meant to receive one. In my daughter's glittering new world, there was no room for a woman who smelled like cleaning chemicals and wore shoes from Payless. But they had no idea what I was about to discover. No idea that sometimes the universe has a way of balancing the scales. They thought my story was over. It was just beginning. I couldn't afford to fall apart. That's the luxury of the wealthy. They can take mental health days, sob into therapists' shoulders at $300 an hour, retreat to spas when life gets hard. When you make $15.50 an hour, you show up, you smile, you survive. Monday morning, 5:47 a.m. My alarm screamed from across the room. I'd learned to place it far from the bed so I couldn't hit snooze. The face in my bathroom mirror looked like it had aged 10 years in 2 days. Red-rimmed eyes, new lines around my mouth, gray roots showing because I'd been saving the $40 hair dye money for Emma's wedding gift. A wedding I wouldn't attend. I pressed my uniform, same as every morning for 28 years, pinned on my service badges, applied concealer under my eyes. By 6:30, I was on the train with the other invisible people, janitors, food service workers, certified nursing assistants, the backbone of Boston, ignored by those we serve. Linda, honey, you look terrible. Maria grabbed my shoulders the moment I walked into Prestige Dry Cleaners. What happened? Is Emma okay? The concern in her eyes almost broke me. I forced a smile. Everything's fine, just didn't sleep well. But Maria had worked alongside me for 15 years. She knew my tells. Throughout the morning, I caught her watching me as I sorted clothes, tagged items, worked the pressing machine. When Mrs. Henderson came in with her usual Monday drop-off, 7 designer suits that cost more than my car, I had to excuse myself to the bathroom. I locked myself in the stall and bit my fist to keep from screaming. The unfairness of it all crashed over me in waves. Here I was, handling clothes worth thousands for women who saw me as furniture, and my own daughter had joined their ranks. Linda, Maria's voice came through the door. I'm closing the shop for lunch. We need to talk. I can't afford to miss. I'm clocking you in. Boss's orders. Her tone left no room for argument. We sat in the break room, and Maria slid a cup of coffee across to me. Real coffee, not the instant stuff we usually drank. Spill, she commanded. And I did. Every humiliating detail poured out between sobs. Emma's shame, Alex's dismissal, the wedding I'd dreamed of since the day Emma was born, happening without me. Maria's face went through a journey, shock, anger, then something like determination. That little, after everything you've done? Remember when she had that emergency appendectomy in college? You donated plasma twice a week for 3 months to pay the part insurance didn't cover. She doesn't remember. Or maybe she does, and it doesn't matter anymore. Listen to me. Maria grabbed my hands. You're worth 10 of those Back Bay snobs. Don't you let them make you feel...
The bell above the door chimed. We both jumped up, ready to return to work, but it wasn't a customer. Henry Chen stood in the doorway, and I hadn't seen him in 3 years. He'd worked here in the early 2000s, fresh from Beijing, with impeccable English and a business degree that meant nothing without connections. I'd trained him on the machines, taught him the secret to removing wine stains, champagne spots, lipstick marks, all the evidence of lives lived lavishly. Now he stood there in a suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months, looking like success itself. Linda? Maria? His face lit up. I was hoping I'd find you both here. Henry! Maria rushed to hug him. Look at you! I heard you opened your own places. 7 locations now, he said modestly, but his eyes were on me. Linda, I actually came to see you. Could we talk? All by lunch. I gestured at my uniform. I'm working. I'll cover her, Maria said firmly. Go. That's how I found myself sitting across from Henry at a real restaurant. Not a food court or a sandwich shop, but a place with cloth napkins and multiple forks. I felt underdressed, out of place, exactly how Alex said I'd feel at the wedding. You taught me everything, he said without preamble. Not just about cleaning, about work ethic, about treating every customer's clothes like they were precious, even if the customer treated you like dirt. You were a good student, I managed. You were more than that. He pulled out a leather folder. Linda, do you remember that solution you created for vintage silk restoration? My mind felt foggy. The one with the... Yes, I remember. You were working on that wedding dress, the 1940s heirloom. The bride was in tears. You saved that dress, and you told me to write down the formula, said it might be worth something someday. It was just something I figured out, trial and error. It was genius. He opened the folder, revealing official-looking documents. I kept working on it after I left, refined it, made it commercially viable. And then, he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I patented it. That's wonderful, Henry. I'm proud of you. You don't understand. He pushed a document across the table. Linda, I patented it with both our names. You're listed as co-inventor. You always were. I stared at the paper, the legal language swimming before my eyes. What does this mean? It means that for the past 5 years, while I've been licensing this formula to dry cleaners across the country, half the royalties have been going into an escrow account. Your account. That's not... You didn't have to... Linda, look at me. His voice was gentle but firm. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You taught me that work has dignity no matter what anyone thinks. And you gave me the foundation for a business that's made me wealthy. The least I could do was make sure you shared in that success. He pulled out another paper, an account statement. I blinked at the numbers, sure I was reading them wrong. 3.2 million? I whispered. Give or take. There are tax implications, of course, and... Henry, I can't. This is your money, your success. No, his voice turned fierce. This is justice. You've been living paycheck to paycheck while your innovation made millionaires. That ends today. I thought about Emma, about Alex's sneering face, about being too poor to attend my daughter's wedding. Then I looked at this man who remembered kindness, who honored the teacher who'd helped him. I don't even know what to do with money like this. Whatever you want, Henry said simply. But if I were you, I'd start by showing certain people that Linda Parker's worth was never measured in dollars. It was measured in the lives she touched, the people she lifted up, and the dignity she maintained despite everything. I stared at those numbers again. $3.2 million. Enough to buy my way into Alex's world? Maybe. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. This wasn't about buying acceptance. This was about something much more powerful. Henry, I said slowly, tell me about your business. Tell me everything. He smiled, recognizing the look in my eyes, the same look I'd had when I figured out that silk restoration formula, the look of someone who'd been knocked down but not knocked out. Well, he began, it started with a single location in Chinatown.
As Henry talked, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Not happiness, exactly, not yet, but something better. Purpose. They thought I was nothing, an embarrassment, a woman who smelled like chemicals and wore orthopedic shoes. They thought my story was one of failure, of not measuring up. They had no idea what Linda Parker was capable of, but they were about to find out. I don't want to be rich. The words fell out of my mouth before I could stop them. Henry's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. Around us, the restaurant hummed with the conversations of Boston's business class, deals being made, connections being forged, wealth being accumulated. And here I sat, rejecting millions. Linda, no, listen. I pressed my palms flat against the white tablecloth, grounding myself. My whole life, I've watched rich people. They bring in their clothes reeking of perfume and superiority. They look through me like I'm glass. And now my daughter, my Emma, she's become one of them. My voice cracked on her name. Henry reached across the table, covering my weathered hand with his manicured one. "Then don't be rich," he said simply. "Be powerful." What's the difference? Rich is what they are. Numbers and accounts, labels on clothes, the right zip code. Power. He squeezed my hand. Power is knowing your worth has nothing to do with their approval. Power is building something they can't ignore. I thought about Emma at 12 helping me sort clothes at the shop during summer break. She'd hold up designer gowns, spinning in circles, pretending she was going to grand balls. "Someday, Hom, I'll wear dresses like this and take you with me everywhere." "What did you have in mind?" I asked Henry. His eyes lit up. "There's a space available. Former boutique on Newberry Street." I nearly choked on my water. Newberry Street? That's right in the heart of Alex Whitfield's world? Yes. "Henry, I can't open a dry cleaner on Newberry Street. Do you know what those women would—" "Not a dry cleaner." He leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "A restoration atelier. Vintage luxury goods. Museum quality preservation. The kind of place where money can't buy expertise. Only excellence can." My mind raced. All those years of fixing what others had ruined. The Hermes bag I'd saved from a wine disaster. The 1950s Dior that everyone said was beyond hope. The wedding dress from 1932 that I'd spent 3 weeks restoring by hand, thread by careful thread. They'd never come. Not to a place run by someone like me. "They already do." Henry pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. "Remember Mrs. Blackwood, the senator's wife? She's been asking my shops for that woman who fixed my grandmother's inaugural gown. Mrs. Davidson, the one with the Beacon Hill townhouse, she tells everyone about the miracle worker who saved her daughter's christening dress after the dog got to it. They don't know that was me." "Exactly. They know your work. They've just never connected it to the woman they ignore every Monday morning." A strange feeling bubbled up in my chest. Not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. I'd need training. Real certification. I can't just... The Textile Conservation Center in New York offers an intensive program. 3 months. I'll cover it as a business investment. He was already taking notes, his excitement infectious. "We'll position you as an expert who chose to perfect her craft in the real world before formal certification, because that's the truth." "Henry, why are you doing this?" He set down his phone, his expression serious. "Because 20 years ago, I was invisible too. Fresh off the plane, 2 degrees that meant nothing here, speaking English with an accent that marked me as other. You saw me. More than that, you saw what I could become." Tears threatened again, but these felt different, cleaner somehow. "When do we start?" I whispered. 3 months. That's all it took to transform a lifetime of skill into recognized expertise. The Textile Conservation Center in New York was a revelation, not because I learned new techniques, but because I finally had names for things I'd been doing instinctively for decades. My classmates were young, mostly fresh from undergraduate programs. At first, they looked at me the way Emma's new friends did. What was this older woman doing here? But when the instructor brought out a 1960s Balenciaga with extensive moth damage, and I showed them a restoration technique I'd developed over years of practice, the atmosphere shifted. "Where did you learn that?" a girl named Precious asked, watching me reweave damaged silk with surgical precision. "Necessity," I replied. "When you can't afford to replace things, you learn to fix them perfectly." By graduation, I had 3 job offers from major museums. I turned them all down. The transformation wasn't just professional. Living in New York, even temporarily, showed me something crucial. Elegance wasn't about money. It was about carrying yourself like you belonged anywhere. I discovered consignment shops in the Upper East Side, where last season's cast-offs sold for pennies on their original price. I learned that a good haircut could change everything, that posture mattered more than labels, that confidence was the most expensive thing you could wear, and it cost nothing but courage. Maria texted me updates from Boston. Emma had called the shop once, looking for me. She'd been told I was pursuing professional development. The wedding plans continued. September approached like a slow-moving train. The night before I returned to Boston, Henry called. "The space is ready," he said. "I took some liberties with the design. I hope you don't mind." "Henry, you've already done too much." "Let me finish. Your client list is also ready. 17 women have already inquired about services based on word of mouth alone, including," he paused dramatically, "Margaret Whitfield." My heart stopped. Alex's mother. "She has a collection of vintage Chanel that needs attention. She's very particular about who touches them. When she heard about the mysterious restoration expert opening on Newbury Street, she insisted on being first. Does she know? No. She knows nothing except that L. Parker is accepting clients by referral only, which, by the way, was brilliant marketing on my part. Nothing makes rich people want something more than being told it's exclusive." I flew back to Boston on a Thursday. Henry picked me up at Logan, driving straight to Newbury Street. The trees were beginning to turn, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. September in New England, wedding season. He pulled up in front of a discreet storefront between a Swiss watch boutique and a French macaron shop. The sign read simply, "L. Parker, Restoration Atelier," in understated gold lettering. "Ready?" Henry asked. I thought about the woman who'd stood in her polyester uniform 3 months ago, deemed too poor for her daughter's wedding. That woman still lived inside me, might always live inside me, but she was no longer all I was. The door chimed as we entered, and I gasped. The space was perfect. All clean lines and natural light, with custom storage for delicate pieces and a visible workshop area behind glass. Professional, elegant, but unpretentious. "Your office is in the back," Henry said, but I was frozen, staring at the workshop. Because there, hung on a dress form in perfect lighting, was my mother's wedding dress, the one I'd kept in storage for Emma, the one I'd restored myself when she was 16, dreaming of her wearing it someday. "How did you—" "Maria. She said you'd need something to remind you why you're doing this." I approached the dress slowly, running my fingers over the French lace I'd repaired by hand, the pearl buttons I'd polished one by one. Emma had tried it on once, spinning in front of my bedroom mirror. "I'll wear this when I marry someone who loves me as much as Daddy loved you," she'd said. "She made her choice," I said quietly. "Yes," Henry agreed. "And now you make yours." Monday morning, my first official day. I arrived at 6 a.m., old habits dying hard. By 7, I'd reorganized the workspace twice and checked my appointment book 10 times. Margaret Whitfield, 9 a.m. I dressed carefully, a simple black dress, well cut but not flashy, low heels, minimal jewelry. My hair was pulled back in a style the salon had called effortless elegance, which had taken 45 minutes to achieve. At 8:59, a black town car pulled up outside. I watched from behind the workshop glass as Margaret Whitfield emerged, all cream cashmere and heirloom pearls. She moved like a woman who'd never questioned her place in the world. The chime announced her entry. I waited a beat, then emerged from the workshop, channeling every lesson in poise I'd learned in poise. "Mrs. Whitfield, welcome to L. Parker." She appraised me with sharp eyes, taking in every detail. I didn't fidget, didn't smile too broadly, didn't apologize for existing. "Miss Parker, I've heard remarkable things about your work." Her voice was cultured, careful. "I have a collection that requires discreet attention." "Of course. Please, let's discuss your needs in the consultation room." I led her to the space Henry had designed for exactly this purpose. Intimate but professional, with portfolios of before and after restorations displayed like art. "I should mention," she said, settling into the Italian leather chair, "that I'm quite particular about my things. The last person who attempted to clean my 1955 Chanel suit ruined it completely. I had to throw it away." I knew that suit. I'd been the one who tried to save it after another cleaner's disaster, working unpaid overtime because Maria couldn't afford to lose the Whitfield account. I'd managed to salvage it, but apparently that story had been revised. How unfortunate, I said smoothly. I find that most damage comes from treating vintage pieces like modern clothing. Each era has its own unique challenges. Exactly, she leaned forward, warming to the topic. You understand. Now, I have several pieces I need restored before my son's wedding. It's next month, and I want to wear my mother's jewelry, but the settings are tarnished, and there's a particular dress. My son's wedding. The words hit like ice water, but I didn't flinch. I'd be happy to assess the pieces. When would be convenient for you to bring them in? Oh, I don't bring anything anywhere, she laughed, a tinkling sound that probably opened doors across Boston. You'll come to me, of course. Thursday afternoon, 2 o'clock? House calls. Of course. I thought of all the times women like her had treated me like the help, and now she was inviting me into her home as an expert. I'll check my schedule, I said, making a show of consulting my appointment book. Let her wait. Let her wonder if L. Parker had time for Margaret Whitfield. Thursday at 2 would work. My consultation fee for house calls is $500, which applies toward any services rendered. She didn't blink at the number. Wonderful. I'll have my driver pick you up. That won't be necessary. I'll arrive at 2 precisely. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise? Respect? She wasn't used to service providers who didn't jump at her offers. After she left, trailing perfume and entitlement, I sat in my beautiful new space and laughed. Not the bitter laugh of 3 months ago, but something lighter, cleaner. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mom, I heard you're back in town. Can we talk? Emma. I stared at the message for a long moment, then I deleted it. I had a business to run, a new life to build. And on Thursday, I'd walk into Margaret Whitfield's mansion not as the help, but as the expert she needed. They thought they knew my worth. They were about to learn how badly they'd miscalculated. The best part? They wouldn't even see it coming. Thursday arrived like a verdict. I stood before the Whitfield mansion in Wellesley, its colonial perfection sneering down at me from manicured heights. 22 rooms, the society pages had said. A property passed down through 5 generations of Whitfields, each one adding their own wing of privilege. My rental Mercedes, Henry had insisted, looked at home in the circular drive, but I still felt the ghost of my old Honda Civic, the one with the rattling muffler I'd parked 3 blocks away whenever I picked Emma up from Alex's apartment. You must be Miss Parker. The housekeeper who answered the door wore a uniform nicer than most of my regular clothes. Mrs. Whitfield is in the study. I followed her through rooms that reeked of old money, Persian rugs worn just enough to show their age, oil paintings of stern ancestors, furniture that had probably witnessed the signing of the Constitution. This was Alex's childhood home. These halls had shaped the man who deemed me too poor to witness my daughter's wedding. Margaret Whitfield sat behind a mahogany desk, surrounded by garment bags and jewelry boxes, like a queen holding court. Ah, Miss Parker, precisely on time. I appreciate punctuality. She gestured to a chair across from her. I've laid out the pieces requiring attention. For the next hour, I examined her collection with professional detachment. A 1962 Givenchy with cigarette burns. A party at the Kennedy compound, can you imagine? Her grandmother's pearl parure with several missing stones. Worn to 7 presidential inaugurations. A Fortuny pleated dress with water damage. Never trust Italian weather. Each piece came with a story, a casual dropping of names meant to remind me of my place. I took notes in my leather portfolio, made non-committal sounds, suggested solutions without groveling. This Chanel suit, she said, producing a familiar cream boucle, is particularly important. I plan to wear it to the rehearsal dinner. My hand stilled on my pen. The rehearsal dinner? For my daughter's wedding?
It was ruined by some incompetent at a cheap cleaner years ago. I've kept it hoping someone could restore it. The sentimental value, you understand.
I understood. This was the suit I'd spent 14 unpaid hours restoring. The one she'd claimed was thrown away. Now she wanted me to fix it again, to prepare it for the party I couldn't attend. May I? I examined the jacket, hiding my face as memories flooded back. My fingertips found the invisible mending I'd done along the shoulder seam, the careful reweaving that had taken 3 attempts to get right. The original damage was extensive, I said evenly, but the previous restoration was actually quite skillful. See here, this repair work is museum quality. Whoever did this understood the fabric structure intimately. Margaret leaned forward, squinting. I never noticed. The cleaner said it was ruined. Perhaps they were being modest. This level of work typically costs thousands. You received a bargain. Her face went through several expressions before settling on confusion. But they were just a cheap downtown cleaner. Excellence exists in unexpected places, I said, handing back the jacket. This needs only minor freshening. Shall we discuss the other pieces? As we continued through her collection, something shifted in the room's dynamics. She expected me to fawn, to be grateful for her attention. Instead, I treated her like what she was, a client who needed my expertise. Tell me about your son's wedding, I said casually, examining a beaded evening bag. Outdoor or indoor? It affects how we prepare the fabrics. Oh, it's quite the production. 3 days at our Nantucket compound. Alexander's fiancé comes from modest circumstances, so we're handling everything. Poor dear wouldn't know where to begin with an event of this caliber. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. How generous of you. Well, what else could we do? The girl's mother is, let's just say she's not equipped for society. Alexander made the difficult but necessary decision to limit the guest list accordingly. I held a vintage brooch up to the light, watching how the diamonds scattered rainbows across the wall. Difficult decisions often reveal our true character. Exactly. I knew you'd understand. People like us know that standards must be maintained. People like us. If only she knew. Although, I continued, still examining the brooch, I've found that excluding family often creates more talk than including them. Society does love a scandal.
She stiffened slightly. There's no scandal. The bride's mother is simply inappropriate for the setting. Of course, I made a note in my portfolio. Still, her absence will be noticed. These things always are. Where's the mother of the bride? Such an awkward question to deflect all evening. I watched doubt creep into her expression like water finding cracks in a foundation. We've prepared responses, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier certainty. I'm sure you have. I closed my portfolio with a decisive snap. I'll have estimates for each piece by tomorrow. The rush timing for a September wedding will incur additional charges, of course. Money is no object. The phrase rolled off her tongue so easily, a lifetime of never checking price tags distilled into 4 words. As the housekeeper showed me out, I passed a wall of family photos. There was Alex at every stage, gap-toothed child, lacrosse champion, Harvard graduate, and there in a recent photo stood my Emma, smiling beside him at some charity gala, wearing a dress that cost more than I made in a month. She looked happy. She looked like she belonged. She looked nothing like my daughter. That night, back in my Dorchester apartment, I sat with a glass of wine. Good wine now, the kind I'd only sniffed while handling stained designer clothes. My phone had 13 missed calls from Pema. I'd blocked her number after the 3rd. Henry called at 9. How did it go? She wants me to prepare her clothes for my daughter's wedding, the one I'm not invited to. A long silence. Then, Linda, are you okay? Was I? I thought about Margaret Woodfield's casual cruelty, her assumption that people like us shared the same values. I thought about my Emma, who'd chosen their world over mine. I'm better than okay, I said finally. I'm going to that wedding. But you weren't invited. No, Linda Parker, the dry cleaner, wasn't invited, but Elle Parker, restoration expert to Boston's elite, the woman preparing the mother of the groom's entire ensemble. I smiled, sharp as winter. She's essential. Linda, they made the rules, Henry. They decided worth was measured in dollars and surnames. They created a game where people like us could never win. I swirled my wine, watching it catch the light. So I changed the game. Friday morning, I sent Margaret Whitfield my estimates. Fair prices, but with rush charges that made her collection's restoration cost more than a car. She approved within an hour, including a note. Could you possibly deliver everything to Nantucket personally? I'd feel better knowing the pieces were in expert hands for transport. Of course she would. I called Henry. I need a gown for crashing my daughter's wedding with more style than the mother of the groom.
He laughed, bright and delighted. Now you're thinking like a businessman. I know just the place. That afternoon, he took me to a boutique in the Back Bay that didn't display prices because if you had to ask, you didn't belong. The owner, a French woman who moved like water, brought out dresses that were art masquerading as clothing. No, I said to the first 7 options, I need something that says I belong there more than they do. She studied me with new interest, then disappeared into the back. She returned with a midnight blue Oscar de la Renta, deceptively simple until you noticed the hand-embroidered stars scattered across the skirt like a private constellation. This one, she said, makes a quiet statement. It says you need prove nothing to anyone. I tried it on, and for the first time in my life, I understood what Emma had chosen, the weight of luxury, the way it made you stand differently, move differently, the way it whispered that you were worth something. We'll take it, Henry said, before I could check the price. Henry, consider it a business expense. You're advertising our brand. Our brand? When had this become ours? The week before the wedding passed in a blur of work. My client list grew daily, Margaret Whitfield's friends intrigued by her enthusiasm. I restored treasures while listening to them gossip about the upcoming wedding of the season. The bride's family isn't contributing at all, one woman confided while I examined her damaged Hermes. Can you imagine? I heard the mother wasn't even invited, some situation with her background. I made appropriate noises, filed away information, perfected my mask of professional discretion. The Wednesday before the wedding, I texted Margaret, "Your collection is ready. I can deliver to Nantucket on Friday afternoon." Her response was immediate. "Perfect. You can set everything up in my dressing room. I'll need you to steam and arrange each piece. Is your assistant available as well?" My assistant. I almost laughed. "I work alone," I replied. "My methods are proprietary." "Of course. How mysterious. I'll have the guest house prepared for you." The guest house, where the help stayed. Thursday night, I stood in my apartment, packing carefully, the restored pieces for Margaret, my tools, and in a separate garment bag, my midnight blue constellation. Emma called again. This time, I answered. "Mom?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "I heard you're coming to Nantucket with Mrs. Whitfield's things." "I have a professional obligation," I said coolly. "Mom, please, can we talk? I know I hurt you, but—" "Emma." I cut her off, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "You made it very clear that I don't belong in your world. I'm simply honoring your wishes." "That's not—" "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did, and that's okay. You chose your life. Now let me choose mine." "I'm still your daughter," she whispered. No, the word fell between us like a blade. My daughter would never have been ashamed of where she came from. My daughter understood that love doesn't have a price tag. You're someone else now, someone who measures worth in dollars and judges people by their zip codes. Mom, I'll see you at the wedding, Emma. Or rather, you'll see me. Goodbye. I hung up and turned off my phone. In 12 hours, I'd be on a ferry to Nantucket. In 36 hours, I'd walk into my daughter's wedding uninvited and unashamed. They thought they knew who I was. They thought they could erase me with their money and their rules and their standards. They were about to learn that Linda Parker, L. Parker, didn't need their permission to exist. The reckoning was coming, dressed in midnight blue and stars. The ferry to Nantucket cut through gray September waters like a knife through silk. I stood on the deck, salt wind whipping my carefully styled hair, watching the island grow larger. Somewhere on that slice of land, my daughter was preparing to marry a man who taught her that love came with conditions. The Whitfield compound sprawled across the coastline like a declaration of war against ordinary people. 3 houses, tennis courts, a private beach. As the taxi wound up the crushed shell drive, I saw the wedding preparations in full swing. Workers erecting a massive tent, florists hauling in what looked like entire gardens, a string quartet rehearsing Pachelbel's canon. Miss Parker, Margaret Whitfield, descended the main house steps, resplendent in resort casual that probably cost more than most car down payments. Perfect timing. You can set up in my suite. The rehearsal dinner is at 7. I followed her through rooms filled with wedding chaos. Bridesmaids giggled over champagne, groomsmen practiced their entrances, and there, in the center of it all, stood Emma. She looked up as we passed, her face draining of color. I met her eyes for exactly 2 seconds, enough to register, not enough to acknowledge, then continued following Margaret. I cannot tell you how excited I am about the pieces, Margaret chattered as we climbed to the master suite. Everyone's been asking about my restoration expert. You've become quite the mystery. Her dressing room was larger than my apartment. I spent 2 hours arranging her clothes, steaming out invisible wrinkles, adjusting jewelry settings. Professional, perfect, invisible. The rehearsal dinner starts soon, Margaret said, admiring herself in the restored Chanel. The help usually eats in the kitchen. Maria will show you. Actually, I said, closing my equipment case with practiced efficiency, I'll be dining at the Wonet. I have reservations at 8. Her face went through several expressions. The Walwinet? But that's... How did you... manage to get reservations at the island's most exclusive restaurant? I smiled pleasantly. I have my ways. Enjoy your evening, Mrs. Whitfield. I left her standing there, mouth slightly open, worldview slightly tilted. The rehearsal dinner was in full swing as I departed. Through the tense gauze walls, I could see the golden glow of wealth at play. Emma's laugh carried on the wind, bright and false. At the Wawanet, I dined alone on oysters and excellent wine, watching the sunset paint the harbor in shades of rose and gold. The other diners were the kind of people who summered in Nantucket, who said things like summer as a verb. A few recognized me from their visits to my shop, nodding with the careful respect reserved for service providers who'd crossed into their territory. I returned to the guest house at 10 a.m., finding a gift basket on the bed. Imported chocolates, a bottle of champagne, a note in Emma's handwriting. Thank you for coming. Can we please talk? E. I left it untouched. Saturday dawned perfect, because of course it did. God wouldn't dare rain on Alexandra Whitfield's wedding. I spent the morning in calculated preparation, hair twisted into an elegant chignon, makeup subtle but flawless. The midnight blue gown fit like destiny. At 2 o'clock, I emerged from the guest house carrying Margaret's evening jewelry to the main house, my official reason for being there. The ground swarmed with guests arriving, staff rushing, photographers capturing every gilded moment. Linda? I turned to find Alex's younger sister, Victoria, staring at me in confusion. We'd met once, years ago, when Emma and Alex first started dating, back when I was still invited to things. "I'm sorry," I said smoothly. "I'm Elle Parker, Mrs. Whitfield's restoration specialist." She blinked, taking in my appearance, clearly trying to reconcile this elegant woman with her memory of Emma's working-class mother. My mistake. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock. At 3:45, I positioned myself on the terrace overlooking the beach where 200 chairs faced an altar of white roses and baby's breath. Close enough to see everything, far enough to remain unnoticed. The music began. The wedding party processed. Alex stood at the altar looking like a Kennedy, all jaw and privilege. Then came Emma, floating down the aisle in a dress that cost more than I had made in a decade at the dry cleaner.
She was beautiful. She was radiant. She was a stranger wearing my daughter's face. Linda? Linda Parker? I turned to find Henry's prediction made flesh. Sophie, Alex's 8-year-old daughter from his first marriage, stood behind me in a flower girl dress, her face bright with recognition. "Are you Emma's mom?" she asked, that innocent directness that children wield like weapons. "She showed me pictures. She said you were the best mom in the world." "When did she say that?" I asked softly. "Last night. She was crying in the bathroom. She said she made a big mistake and her mom would never forgive her." My heart cracked, just a hairline fracture, but I held my composure. "You should go back to the wedding, sweetheart." "But why aren't you sitting down there? Moms always sit in the front row. That's the rule." Before I could answer, she grabbed my hand. "Come on, there's an empty chair right next to Grandma Whitfield." And that's how I found myself being led to the ceremony by a determined 8-year-old, her flower girl dress rustling with purpose. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. "Sophie, darling, what are you—" Margaret Whitfield's voice died as she saw me. "I found Emma's mom," she announced proudly. "She was standing all alone." The music had stopped. The entire wedding party turned to stare. Emma's bouquet trembled in her hands. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," I said, voice carrying in the sudden silence. "Sophie was concerned about the empty chair." Margaret's face went through several shades of mortification. The empty chair in the front row, the seat where the mother of the bride should sit, gaped like an accusation. "Mom?" Emma's voice broke. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said simply, "to deliver Mrs. Whitfield's jewelry. Sophie felt I should stay for the ceremony." Alex stepped forward, his face thunder. "This is highly inappropriate." "No." Emma's voice cut through his. She was staring at me, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "What's inappropriate is that my mother is standing here like a stranger at my wedding." "Emma, darling, perhaps we should continue this discussion." "No!" Emma's composure shattered completely. "I'm done. I'm done pretending this is okay." She turned to me, mascara running. "Mom, you gave me everything, and I threw it away for what? For people who measure worth in stock portfolios?" Margaret stood abruptly. "Perhaps we should postpone—" "Actually, I should go. This is your day, Emma. Your choice. It always has been." I turned to leave, but Margaret's voice stopped me. "Wait. Miss Parker, Linda, I owe you an apology." She seemed to age 10 years in that moment. "And perhaps we could discuss that business proposition I mentioned. Your restoration work is extraordinary. I could provide significant investment." I turned back slowly, meeting her eyes. The woman who deemed me unworthy, who'd encouraged my exclusion, who'd treated me like the help just hours ago. "Mrs. Whitfield," I said clearly, I don't mix business with people who judge others by their bank accounts. My work stands on its own merit, as do I. The silence was complete. 200 of Boston's elite watched Linda Parker, the dry cleaner, the embarrassment, the woman too poor to attend her daughter's wedding, reject Margaret Whitfield's money. Furthermore, I continued, I've learned something important. You can't restore what was never genuine. You can fix tears in fabric, but not in character. You can remove stains from clothes, but not from conscience. I looked at Emma one last time. I'll always love you, Emma, the real you, the girl who helped me sort clothes and dreamed of making the world better. When you remember who that is, you know where to find me. I walked through the crowd with my head high, past the shocked faces and dropped jaws. Sophie's voice carried on the wind. Is the wedding still happening? At the edge of the property, I heard footsteps running behind me. Mom, wait! But I didn't turn around. Some choices can't be undone with tears. Some wounds can't be healed with apologies delivered in wedding white. I called a taxi and left Nantucket that evening, while the Whitfield compound tried to salvage a wedding that had revealed itself as a sham. Henry picked me up at the Boston ferry terminal. How did it go? Exactly as it should have been, I said. I remembered my worth, and Emma remembered what she lost. And now? I smiled, thinking of my shop on Newbury Street, my client list, my life rebuilt on my own terms. Now I continue becoming who I was always meant to be, with or without her. But as we drove through Boston's evening lights, I left room for hope. Not expectation, not forgiveness yet, but hope. Because that's what mothers do, even when their daughters forget what real love looks like. March arrived with unusual warmth, melting the last stubborn snowbanks and coaxing crocuses from the thawing ground. 1 year had passed since the wedding that wasn't. My shop hummed with spring business, winter coats being stored, spring pieces being refreshed. I'd hired 2 assistants, young women who reminded me of myself decades ago, hungry to learn and transform their skills into art. The bell chimed at exactly 2 o'clock. I looked up from a 1948 Maine botcher I was documenting, expecting Mrs. Davidson for her appointment. Emma stood in the doorway. She was thinner, her hair shorter, styled simply, no designer clothes, no massive diamond, no wedding ring. The sign says by appointment only, she said quietly. It does, I agreed, setting down my tools. I don't have an appointment. No, you don't. We stood there, the length of my beautiful shop between us, 2 women who'd once shared everything and then nothing. The divorce was finalized yesterday. It turns out Alex didn't want a wife who embarrassed him in front of Boston society, and his family's fortune wasn't as solid as they pretended. Bad investments. Pride before the fall. I'm sorry, I said, and found I meant it. Don't be. I'm not. She took a tentative step forward. I'm working again. Marketing for a nonprofit that helps immigrant women start businesses. The pay is terrible. The work is everything. Another step. I live in a studio in Somerville. I take the bus. I shop at Market Basket. I'm learning to cook. Really cook, not just reheat designer takeout. Another step. I volunteer at the dry cleaner on Saturdays. Maria says I'm getting better at stain removal. She was halfway across the shop now, tears flowing freely. I found myself, Mom. Or maybe I found her again. The girl who knew that love doesn't have a price tag, who understood that worth isn't measured in dollars. Emma, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I hurt you in ways that may never fully heal, but I'm hoping maybe we could start over, not as the people we were, but as who we are now. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. The designer polish was gone, but something more valuable had replaced it. Truth, humility, the understanding that comes from falling far and climbing back up. "There's a cafe next door," I said carefully. "They make excellent coffee." Hope bloomed in her eyes. "I have time." So do I. We walked out together into the March afternoon, two women beginning the slow work of restoration. Not of what was, that was gone forever, but of what could be. Because unlike fabric, hearts can grow stronger at the broken places. And some things, real things, true things, are worth saving. Even when they come back to you 6 months late, wearing humility instead of designer labels, carrying hard-won wisdom instead of expensive bags. Especially then.